Welcome to episode 2 of the stories behind the pictures. And no, I still don't have a theme song. It's late in the evening, and the crickets that you hear are real. They're not a sound effect. Which is actually perfect, because today's theme is going to be night photography, especially in and around the city of Montreal. To take good night images, you need a good tripod. Now, don't trust a $50 tripod to properly hold a $2,000 camera. I've learned that lesson the hard way. You also need to know your camera and use settings that are conducive to good night photography. That means using the timer and the mirror lock features. If you don't know what that is, read the manual. You also need to take photographies in RAW mode. These RAW files are 16 bits. They're large and they give you a lot of virtual space to correct changes in color balance and luminosity. If the star of today's show is Montreal, then I might as well start with a shot of the downtown core. We were really lucky on this one, as the low clouds perfectly complemented the illuminated buildings. This picture has sold many times, and I once recognized it on a poster announcing a photography contest that was being organized by IGA, a local chain of grocery stores. Just to play with their heads, I submitted the same image to their contest. Hey, if it's good enough for their poster, it should be good enough to win. As you can guess by the bitterness in my voice, I didn't win. The first shot of the downtown core was taken from the Cité du Havre, and right behind me was Habitat 67. Built 30 years ago, these condos are still very popular, which is not really surprising when you consider the amazing view in front of them. The city of Laval lies just north of the island of Montreal, and this is where you can find a Cosmodome, which is some kind of space museum or space camp. This poor rocket was built to soar into the sky, and instead it has to serve as a poor substitute for a large Christmas tree. I'm sure that if it could talk, it would simply say, "Please, somebody kill me now." I am quite sure that our annual Gay Pride Parade is one of the favorite events, not only for the gay and lesbian community, but also for the city's many photographers. Except maybe for the 2 years where it was held at night. Trying to properly capture all of those dancing and gyrating bodies under low light conditions is next to impossible. I had to resort to use my flash, and sometimes I got lucky. The reign of Pope John Paul II lasted for so long that a local tradition was almost forgotten to the point of becoming an urban myth. As his health further deteriorated, my dad warned me to expect the large cross at the top of Mont Royal to be illuminated in purple instead of its usual white. On the first night following his death, my wife and I drove to the mountain and hiked up. It was a gloomy spring evening, complete with rain and large patches of wet ice. It was really, really slippery. A couple of days later, we even got a call from a journalist from the National Post who wanted to include our story in an article. Like many landmarks, the Montreal Olympic Stadium may not be a beauty from up close, but at night, with the right angle, it really looks gorgeous. In late twilight, 30-45 minutes after sunset, the sky may look dark to the eye, but a long photographic exposure will produce a lovely purple or magenta color. DreamWorks SKG actually paid me a lot of money to use this image in the movie Blades of Glory, which actually just came out on DVD. Even though the image was modified extensively, you can clearly recognize it in one of the still images that was used for the movie's marketing. Unfortunately, in the movie itself, that scene was cut and you barely see what's out of the window. For obvious reasons, one of my favorite events of winter is the annual Highlights Festival. During my first visit in 2004, I only had one of those small tripods barely larger than my own hand. These street performers would dip 2 chains in oil, light them on fire, and then swing them around. In order to properly capture this moment, I had to lie down on the ground near a small concrete divider. This turned out to be a good thing, since the resulting perspective gave me one of my best shots of the year. I have a certain emotional link to this image of the old port's ice rink, as this is the last photograph ever taken by my first DSLR, a Canon Rebel XT. Shortly afterward, as I was setting up to photograph the evening's fireworks show, I turned around to grab a spare battery out of my bag and tipped my partially open tripod with the camera on top. The camera slammed into the frozen ground, and essentially the damage was not repairable. Fortunately though, the lens survived, and I can now use it on my new Rebel XTI. In recent years, the city moved the Highlights Festival to Place Jacques-Cartier. City Hall might provide for a nice backdrop, but I still miss the old location near Place des Arts, as it was surrounded by illuminated buildings. Located in the old port, Notre-Dame de Bon Secours is one of the most photographed churches in Montreal, and for good reasons. Unfortunately, to get the angle right, you have to set your tripod in the middle of the street, which is essentially impossible to do during the tourist season. As you can probably guess by now, this was taken in winter, but I still needed to have my wife with me so that she could watch my back during the long exposure. And finally, there are the fireworks. We get a lot of them in summer, but also during the other seasons. The secret for a good fireworks image is to find something interesting, either in the foreground or the background. This image was taken from the top of my friend's condo in the old port, and you can clearly see the launching platform located just in front of the biosphere. And finally, this last image was taken in the old port, near the St. Lawrence River. I really like how the explosions are perfectly framed by the people and the Bonaventure Pavilion. What?